Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming out in the rain and a little bit of hail to be here tonight to listen to this presentation. My name is Corporal Teague. I'm with the Upland Police Department. I'm also the school resource officer for the district. So I'm going to start our night off with Dr. Carmen Day, the superintendent, and we'll get this started.
Good evening. It's been a tough few weeks with a lot of different things occurring and a lot of people in our district and in our community impacted, both with the compromise of physical safety, things that are targeting us as temptations and psychological safety. And tonight, we get the opportunity to kind of talk through and get some advice from some experts. We know that some of our issues that we face cannot be resolved with just one person or one group or one organization. And so we come tonight united in partnership with fire, law enforcement, families, and our community all together. So I'm grateful for that. I get the opportunity tonight to start out with introducing Aaron Guesty, who is the father of Tyler Guesty. And he and his family have endured a major hardship, losing their son to a fentanyl overdose. And he has the courage to come and speak before us because he's one of the many that we've united with to make a statement, to bring about a greater degree of awareness, and to impact change. So with that being said, I'd like to invite him up to say a few words. I think he's coming up.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. Again, my name is Aaron Gestel. My son was Tyler Gestel. I know that last name is a little tricky. I know that this is a very loaded issue. Oftentimes it becomes political. I don't get into the politics of it, and I want to just focus more on Tyler's story. I know I could bore you with some statistics and things of that sort. I definitely feel as if my paradigm has certainly shifted in the last 3 weeks. My son is not even buried. We have a funeral service coming up this coming week, and so it's still very fresh. I'm still in shock about it. But again, paradigm shift. My paradigm shift has been a 180. We all read, the stories about fentanyl and what it's doing to our community, what it's doing to our country, and what it's doing to our kids. And I think there's so much going on that we just kind of glaze over and look at other things, and we're dealing with life and paying bills and doing things with our families. And unfortunately, I don't get to do things with my son anymore, ever. And so I want to focus on more about Tyler and who he was, and hopefully, it'll resonate. And sometimes I think if you can put a name in a picture with a story, I think that can, last a lifetime. So Tyler was a real person, and he was so extraordinary. He was an athlete. My son was not a drug addict. I want to be clear about that. Oftentimes we read about addicts, people, in certain situations that are abusing drugs and maybe alcohol. And my son was not a drug addict. He was an athlete. He was a weightlifter. This kid was very health conscious. I want to get into somewhat of like the warning signs and the calculus and what at least I was trained as a father to look for. But going back to him as an individual person, my son, my son was an athlete, lifted weights, did meal prep. So he would plan his meals out. He was up before anybody. And he was very precise. This kid weighed his lettuce. And he was very conscious about what he put into his body. He was very, he was very calculated. His workout splits were a certain way. And, you know, this is a kid that went to bed at a certain time. He wasn't out partying and things of that sort. And I can tell you that he was at the gym 6 of 7 days a week. And Friday night, Saturday night, he's like, Dad, take me to the gym. Didn't even drive yet. And, you know, I can tell you that, you know, the week before he passed, thank you. The week before he passed, you know, I bought him a coffee and I took it to him and I looked at him. Thank you. I looked at him and I walk in his room, spent a lot of time in his room, and, you know, like most kids do, teenage kids. And I looked at him and I said, you know, I didn't say anything. I just drop off the coffee to him and he just looks at me and he says, God, I love you, Dad. It was just the way he looked at me. It was the weirdest thing that just, I don't know, it kind of shocked me. He never told me he loved me like that, Next Sunday, so about 8 days later, I buy him a coffee. I don't want to disrupt him, you know. I don't know, it was weird. I didn't go in his room, and I just put it in the fridge, and I text him, 9:45, and I said, dude, I got you a coffee. Doesn't respond. Hours go by. I'm doing my thing, you know, and sitting on the couch with my wife, and I look at her, I go, you know, I need to go check on Tyler. It's odd. I kind of text him. I got him a coffee. He hasn't responded to me. And I go in his room, and I can tell you every day, throughout the whole day, all I think about is what I saw. I don't want to go into the details because the details aren't important, but who he is important. And I can just tell you that the hardest thing was sitting down with my family. And unfortunately, I will share that, you know, his siblings had to see him like that. You know, he has 5 surviving siblings. He has brothers that are 22, and the youngest is 8. I had to sit down with his youngest brother who knew something was going on. We got him out of the house, but I had to explain to him that your brother's gone to be with Jesus. The other day, he was just crying, saying, you know, I miss Tyler. None of us, you know, we focusing is difficult. And again, I don't want to get too far off on that. But parents, we have to wake up. And I can tell you the numbers are staggering, and I know that we have some officials here that'll go through the numbers and everything like that. And, you know, we all were, when I was a kid, it was AIDS, and then cancer, and now, right, heart disease is a big one, right? That's why Tyler was so fit. He was so health conscious. And we talk to our kids. We're very open. And we talk to our kids about sex, drugs. You know, we told our kids, you got to graduate school, got to go to college, you got to get a job. You just got to show up, and you're going to beat 99% of the competition. You know, whatever you want to do, we're here for you. You know, we support you. It didn't matter. I mean, we were there for our kids. Don't have premarital sex, you know, all those things that, you know, just divorce is challenging and so on and so forth. Just all the tenets that we were taught. You know, we were open with our kids. You could tell us anything, and we just really thought we had the drug thing covered. You worry about accidents. You worry about just school shootings, big one, right? And the number one thing that kills people 18 to 45, the number one thing now is drug overdoses. The number one thing is drug overdoses. In places like LA County, 92% of the overdoses are, unfortunately fentanyl. And I can tell you that there's other drugs now that are stronger than fentanyl that you don't even know about. I'm just reading about today that are now finding their places here. So, parents, I just encourage you to go home and hug your kids and everything you thought, the warning signs. My son didn't sleep in. My son wasn't a drinker, drug addict. He wasn't somebody that was wild. He was almost a straight A student. This kid was a good academic. I mean, you look at this COVID thing, all the kids are going down. He's going up. I mean, this kid just hit it. We're so proud of him. We're telling all the other kids, like, man, look at Tyler. Well, look at what Tyler's doing. And he was just a model son. And, y'all look for that. And you weigh the privacy. You want to give your kids privacy. The wife and I would talk about that. How much privacy do you give a kid? And I like to think that we could have done it differently. And I can tell you that it was his life. He experimented, and it got him one time. One pill kills. And we just got to do things differently. And I think you need to hug your kids, and your kids need to realize that this boy up here, who would have been a great man, he would have been something phenomenal. He was super, super smart. He would have been something. And now I'm going to remember that picture and how he looks for the rest of my life. I'm going to be an old man, and as we get older, that's what I'm going to remember him as, because he's gone. And I just don't want you guys to go through that. And I really don't. We'll never get over it, but I don't want you to go through that either. And I just want people to start taking this seriously. I take it seriously. And I want you to take it seriously. And I know it's hard for your kids to take it seriously. But, I'm proud of who my son was. And he was a real person. And I just think that sharing is important. So I appreciate your time, and thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so moving on from there, I'm going to go backwards, apparently, on the slides. All right. So what is fentanyl? Fentanyl's a drug, obviously. How big is the problem? And what can we do about it? Those are the questions we need to be asking, because it is a problem. Prescription fentanyl. So originally, fentanyl was made as a prescription, as a very high painkiller. People that had cancer, it came in patch form, pill form, obviously injections, and then illegal fentanyl. Illegal fentanyl is developed and mainly out of Mexico currently. It's getting developed everywhere, but the illegal fentanyl obviously is not maintained like the prescription fentanyl, correct? So they don't measure everything out. They don't make sure that the chemicals they are using are appropriate. They make it cheap and quickly and try to make money off it as fast as they can. So rainbow fentanyl is a new thing that's coming out. Obviously, it looks like candy, right? So that's the scary part. Why would they make it look like candy? I can give you one guess. It's to cater to children, to kids who like bright colored things, who thinks they look like Smarties, right? So it's a really new trend. It's coming in pill and powder form. I've seen it recently where they're coming in those little sugar sticks that you used to be able to open up. They have fentanyl in those. And some people are even disguising it as sidewalk chalk. So they're packaging it and labeling it that way, so it gets over the border easier. And then it just looks like sidewalk chalk. So again, how is fentanyl used? It can be swallowed, it can be snorted, it can be smoked, it can be injected. So it can be any of those things. Currently, part of the problem is a lot of our drugs are being laced with fentanyl. Okay, and so a kid can call up on Snapchat or Instagram or wherever and order a pill. I would like a Vicodin, just for a little high, for a little fun. My friends do it, and they can get these pills delivered to their house, right? So they come, they think they're taking a Vicodin, or they're going to a party and they want to bring something cool, and don't realize that it's laced with fentanyl. Some of the reasons that it's laced with fentanyl is because it makes it extremely addictive, and it gives a very good high. So obviously, if people are going to reorder something, they're going to go to the place where they felt like they got the best high, or they got the best price, or they really feel like they need that pill again and again. That is how it is being used most often in our high schools and younger age children. So 2 out of every 5 counterfeit pills with fentanyl contains a potentially lethal dose, okay? That's scary. So if you are an avid drug user and you use pills on a daily basis, maybe it's not something that you would overdose on. But if you're a teenager or someone who's never tried drugs before and you take one of these pills, you could possibly overdose. So again, the only safe medications are the ones prescribed by a doctor. But again, that doesn't mean that they can't overdose or you cannot overdose on a prescription medication. We've all seen that. So if they're not supposed to have the prescription, it's important that they don't take it, right? So even though you get it from a licensed pharmacist, if you've never had it and it's not prescribed to you, do not take it. Okay, so illegal fentanyl, 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine. It's pretty strong. It's added to heroin to increase its potency. So this is for avid drug users a lot. We find fentanyl all over the streets now, and it just takes a tiny amount to get an extreme high. So a lot of times people purchase it, again, unknowingly, thinking that they're just buying their regular drugs, and it ends up being laced with fentanyl. There's marijuana that's laced with fentanyl. They've also had vapes that I've heard that have been laced with fentanyl recently. So these kids are getting these fun-flavored vapes, and they're buying them off the street in unopened or in open packages, and they're sharing them with their friends, and they could potentially be laced with fentanyl. So again, it's added to these drugs to make them cheaper and more potent, so people continue to purchase them. It is not possible just by the naked eye to tell that something is laced with fentanyl. At the police department, we have stopped testing drugs in the field. We no longer test drugs in the field. We used to, and we've stopped doing that because of the potential dangers. We see pills or a package of white powdery substance or things like that, keep it closed. We will send it in and get it tested that way. We do not open it and test it anymore in the field. So from here, I'm going to introduce the fire department. She's a nurse, and she's going to get a little more in depth and detail.
Hi, my name's Miranda Mulhall. I'm one of the registered nurses that works for the San Bernardino County Fire Department. Thank you for having us. Like you've heard, I'm going to go a little bit more into what exactly is fentanyl. It's not new. And then our response and what you can expect from us when we're called for service. Like you've heard, fentanyl is an opioid. Opioids are typically medicines that are given, prescribed by a physician to treat different, varying degrees of pain. Fentanyl is a little bit different in regards to the classification of the opioid it is, because it's synthetic. So it's not a naturally occurring drug, which to your point is why it's a little bit easier to produce, and it's cheaper to produce as well. The way that it works is it actually blocks the pain receptors in your brain. So it completely mitigates any sort of pain that you're experiencing, and it also produces an experience of euphoria. So it takes away your pain and it makes you feel good systemically from head to toe. So unfortunately it is, in the wrong setting, easily addicted. Medical fentanyl, like you've heard before, this is a newer treatment for significant pain. Typically, it's severely acute pain or chronic pain in your, like you see in your cancer patients. It was synthesized in the 1960s, and it comes in a few different forms in a clinical setting. We actually do give it in the pre-hospital environment. So if you do call 911 for a fracture or potentially a burn or something else, oftentimes we will offer this as an alternative for that pain relief. In the clinical setting, in the pre-hospital setting, like you've heard when it's prescribed by a physician, it's safe. We have the tools and the capability to monitor our patients that do get fentanyl from us. One of the good things about fentanyl and why we do give it in the pre-hospital setting, it has very few side effects and it's relatively short acting. The other important piece to know about fentanyl and other classifications of opioids is there is medications that we can give to reverse the effects, and I'll go into that in just a minute or two. I did pull some local statistics. This is from the Inland Empire Opiate Crisis Coalition. Like you've heard, unfortunately, the misuse and subsequent death and other problems associated with fentanyl is on the rise. In 2020, there was 688 opioid-related deaths. Significant pre-hospital and hospital implications as well. More patients are being called for service, and more patients are being transported to the emergency room for treatment of the misuse of fentanyl. Some of the local statistics, so this is in San Bernardino County and the areas that the county fire department serves. Last year, we had over 1,000 calls for opiate-related overdoses. In Upland, we had 91. The median age for those patients that we responded to was actually right around 40. For calls where we had to do life-saving interventions, we had to give that reversal agent that I spoke of. And all of the county and the areas that we serve, nearly 500, and specifically in Upland, 24. Again, median age right around 40. So we are seeing these numbers, unfortunately, continue to increase. Nationwide, we are seeing, again, a significant increase on these opioid-related deaths and calls for service. Almost 75% of the nearly 92,000 deaths in 2020 were as a result of an opioid. And when you carve down that statistics even further, a significant amount of those are as a result of the misuse of fentanyl. Signs and symptoms of a possible fentanyl overdose. Because these medications misused in a non-clinical setting are significantly more potent than what you'd receive in the hospital, there's a significant systemic response. Typically, for an opioid, or specifically a fentanyl overdose, you'll see a patient that has slowing or absent respiration. So not only does it knock out their pain, it gives them that sense of euphoria, it completely diminishes their drive to breathe on their own. Some other sort of more subtle signs and symptoms are heavy nodding. They may have some sort of lucid intervals, maybe hard to wake up, hard to arouse, clammy, sweaty skins. They'll get a pupillary response, is something we significantly look for in the field to make sure that we're properly treating these patients. And unfortunately, a lot of times when we do get these calls, there's a history of previous drug abuse or misuse. So what can you expect from the San Bernardino County Fire Department if, unfortunately, you do have to call 911 in one of these situations? Rapid assessment and treatment. So we are constantly pushing out education on what to look for these patients with a suspected overdose. Narcan administration, I touched on that a minute ago. That reversal agent that we'll give if we have a suspected opioid overdose, and respiratory support. Like I mentioned before, one of the biggest things and the reason these patients don't do well is because it knocks out their respiratory drive. So when we are called for service, we'll support that respiratory effort and give these life-saving medications. I mentioned briefly Narcan. So that is the reversal. So what it does is it completely takes the fentanyl away from the receptor sites that it's bound to, and it reverses these effects of the fentanyl. It's easy and safe to administer. In our capacity as pre-hospital personnel, we can give it in a different form. We can give it intravenously, which has a quicker and much higher rapid administration rate, but you can also give it intranasally in the non or in the layperson setting. It's quick and painless when you do give it intranasally, so a squirt up each nostril, and that will reverse the effects of that fentanyl that had been previously ingested. One of the most important things that we're pushing out, really education-wise, is if there's any sort of concern, call 911 immediately. The dispatcher or the call taker may ask you some questions. If you are concerned about an opiate overdose or a fentanyl overdose, make sure you're telling that call taker and they can pass along the information to us as well. Narcan, again, that opioid reversal, it can save a life of anybody experiencing an overdose if given in a timely fashion. It can be part of your home first aid kit, and it's also found at any major pharmacy. Some of the other things that we're doing at County Fire to sort of mitigate this problem and intervene in the best way that we can. We are involved in the Narcan Leave Behind program. That's a federally funded program where we will actually leave Narcan with you if we are called to a suspected overdose so that you have it if there's a future occurrence. We're partnering and collaborating with our law enforcement partners to make sure that we're delivering timely education and pushing as much information out as we can. We're partnering with our local EMS authority, which is ISEMA. We have found in San Bernardino County that there is a significant need for higher doses of Narcan. So with that collaboration with them, we've been able to augment our treatment responses. We're able to give higher doses of Narcan to make sure that we are able to reverse that. And we have partnerships and collaborations with other agencies where we're looking at county-wide education that we can push out. And I'll turn that over.
All right, so along with the fire department, most law enforcement carry Narcan. I'm the Narcan instructor for our department. I know every officer that goes out in the field does carry Narcan and is trained on Narcan, along with our volunteers and people like that. I know the school district has also been working at making sure we have Narcan at every location, and people are getting trained on it. Teachers, staff, anybody that wants to get trained on it, and I definitely see a large amount of people have chose to participate on their own, which is amazing. So with that is the Good Samaritan law. So if law enforcement is called to the residence or someone's called to the residence because of a possible overdose, we do not arrest that person. If we see drugs in the area, we do confiscate those, but we do not arrest that person. And this is because of the Good Samaritan law. The point is, we don't want people not calling the fire department or the police department because they're scared they're going to get in trouble or get arrested. So this encourages people of all ages, hey, I think my friend's having an overdose, can you please come? So we have seen a large amount of these things happen in the community, and we are always happy when they call, because the last thing we want is someone to pass away because they were scared to get arrested. All right. With that being said, there is going to be a lot of information on Narcan coming up at the presentation that we'll go through in a few minutes. So with that, this is a general safety meeting, not just on fentanyl and fentanyl overdoses and drug overdoses. So we just went over some general safety stuff that maybe we've had some issues with in some of the schools. So the first is parking lot and traffic safety. One of the big things I've seen is everybody's in a hurry to get through these lines and drop kids off, and I get that. A lot of people running behind in the morning, but all the passengers need to remain buckled in the seats in the car while it's still moving. You know, I go to some of the elementary schools and doors are opening, cars are still moving, and they're getting out. So we want to make sure that all the kids are safe and make sure that your kids are exiting away from traffic if you're dropping them off on the street. Do not block crosswalks or fire zones. And if it's a red curb and it says do not park here, it means do not park here. That's for a reason. It's for safety of pulling out of parking lots and things like that. Stay off your phone and electronic devices. I can tell you, I've chased down plenty of people in parking lots that are driving in the parking lot with their phone here while their kid's trying to get out of the car. So put those down and make sure you're paying attention. And remind kids not to enter the street, especially when they're walking through between two parked cars. You can't see those things, and we want to pay attention. So make sure you remind the kids of that. And follow those signs, and do not do U-turns around the cones. They are there for a reason, for your safety and the kids' safety. If we have cones set up and kids see that, sometimes they'll cross the street there. We want to make sure we pay attention to that, and pulling a U-turn around could potentially harm a student. With that being said, talk to your kids about walking to and from school. No matter what age, I recommend have them walk in groups or pairs. Have them take out their earbuds or their headphones and have them put their phone down while they do this. I can't tell you how many times I've also seen kids, both earbuds in on their phone down and getting ready to walk off a curb straight into front of a car. Okay, so it's super important. If you're gonna have one earbud in, have earbud, listen to music, but also pay attention to your surroundings. If you can, use crosswalks. Those are important, and push the button, and you wait for the hand, okay? Don't assume. This is a big one. A lot of people assume because I can see the driver of the vehicle, they can see me. That is not true. People are not paying attention necessarily, or they're not necessarily looking at that side of the road. So I want everybody to teach their kids that just because you see them does not mean they see you. And wear clothing that can be seen, and bring a flashlight if you're going to be walking in the evening time. If I see a lot of kids all black, right, and then they're leaving school a little bit later and it's starting to get dark. It's already hard, and if people aren't paying attention. So, I mean, even a flashlight or something that they could carry with them to make them more visible. And if they have to, if there's no sidewalk, try to walk on the sidewalk, but if there's no sidewalk and you have to walk in the street, please walk facing traffic on your left-hand side and not up the middle of San Antonio, because that's bad. Don't do that. All right, a couple other things that we've gone over. I've had a lot of questions recently on what people can bring on campus. Weapons-wise, nothing. They cannot bring anything on campus. You cannot bring a pocket knife. You cannot bring a pepper spray. You cannot bring a taser. You cannot bring any of those things, okay? Parents say, I want to give my kids pepper spray, and I understand that, especially if they're walking alone, but we can't have it on campus. And especially if they're under the age of 18, you have to be 18 to purchase pepper spray, and you can only buy 2.5 ounces at a time. If they have any more of that, it's illegal. So make sure the kids are not bringing pepper spray onto campus. And no pocket knives or anything like that either. We see something, say something. So we have a tip line at the high school that's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you see something that makes you uncomfortable, or you see bullying, or you feel uncomfortable, or you're worried about someone's mental health, that tip line is there for a reason. It's anonymous, and we have it there for situations just like that. If somebody doesn't want to come and say, hey, I saw this, because they're uncomfortable, that is what the tip line is there for. Gun safety and storage. So this is just a basic one. I've had questions of, can you bring, if I have a gun, can I leave my gun locked in my vehicle? No, again, including parking lots on campus, you cannot have a gun on campus at all whatsoever, even if it is legally locked in your vehicle appropriately. So just consider that. If you do choose to carry a handgun and choose not to park on campus, you need to make sure that it is stored appropriately. That means with no ammunition in the gun. That's including the magazine, any kind of like that. It needs to be removed from the gun and locked in a safe place. So a safe place could be a trunk with a key. It cannot be your center console. A lot of trucks have, a gun thing that they can put in the middle that's lockable. That's totally fine, but you cannot just leave it in your glove box. Not okay, so don't do that. And safety and storage of devices at home, just make sure that you guys are putting them away. If you have children under the age of 18 in your home, you do need to have your weapon locked If for some reason you just leave it out in your bedside stand or underneath your mattress or on a shelf, and a kid or anybody under the age of 18 were to get a hold of that and injure themselves, take it into public, bring it to school, that is a charge on you. It could be a misdemeanor or felony charge. So just be aware of that, and that means putting things away, not necessarily in plain sight where it's easy for kids to get a hold of it. And take the precautions. If you have the safe there for a reason, make sure that only appropriate people have the combination or only know where the key is for those safety purposes. And with that is just general safety for today. And I think that, other way again. Oh, here's the tip line number. There are cards in the office at the high school. I know we have them everywhere. I know they're on the website. But just in case anybody wants this, it's for parents, it's for students, it's for anybody in the community that is concerned about something that is going on at the high school and you're concerned about. Okay, and so with that, I'm going to introduce Chief Blanco. Is there another one? Oh, yeah. Oh, so before he comes up, this is Prepared to Save a Life. This is the Narcan First Aid CPR training that I know the fire department was going to put on for us, and I think it'd be a really awesome thing to do. I'm going to suggest anybody that can go to that. And now Chief Blanco. Here it is, sir.
Thanks, Caitlin. I'm not going to go over the entire presentation again. First, I want to thank Tyler's dad. I know it's not easy to come up here and speak of your child's life being cut short, but ultimately that's what this is about. So thank you for doing that, because hopefully your message is going to reach others. And they will take a look at this and say, what do I need to do to prevent this from being my child? So thank you for doing that, you and your family. It's amazing. In closing today, you brought up a very interesting point about this being more than just a deadly drug. It is a political issue, unfortunately, and it's associated with all kinds of statistics. We saw that in the presentation today. But what people forget is that those statistics are real people. We start to look at the numbers in the thousands and hundreds of thousands, and you look at pounds that are coming across the border of this stuff, and it becomes a boggling number. But behind every incident is a tragedy, as we have seen today. And that tragedy affects that family, it affects the community, it affects the school, and it affects us in public safety. As much as people think that some of us are automatons or robots, we're not. We are affected by what we see, especially when we're dealing with a child, and that child's life being cut short. So please don't forget about what's behind those statistics, the real lives. You have received very valuable information today on what you can do as a parent, as a family member, as a relative, as a friend, to prevent this type of tragedy from happening to you and your family. Parents have heard time and time that it takes a village to raise a child. Well, let me share with you folks, that village is here today. You have the school district here. You have public safety. You have police and fire. And you have our community member who has suffered a tragedy. This is that village, folks. The support is here. The information is here. And we want you to take it serious. As we have seen that this has affected this child's life. You can see his picture on the screen, happy individual. All of you that have kids, that's exactly what you see. And to prevent this, what you have to do is imagine that's your child up there. So don't take it for granted. Please don't be dismissive of the information you have and think it can't happen to me. Because unfortunately, as you have seen and heard, it happened to Tyler. Thank you.
Okay, with that, it ends our presentation tonight. We will all be here. We have a lot of fire department, some law enforcement, family, and the district members. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to contact us afterwards, and we can answer whatever you have. Thank you.